The Shepmens couldn't drive. None of them. Her husband couldn't drive. He couldn't drive. She couldn't drive. None of the boys could drive. None of the girls could drive in that family. In the Shepmen group, Cleos. I was 7, 8 years old, and Millard would make his nephews let me drive the trucks. We hauled hay, and they'd get to the bridge or something, and they'd get the front wheels on the bridge, and the back wheels would go off the bridge.
Oh no!
You know, stuff like that went on all the time with them boys, and they're almost adults. They're 10, 12 years older than me, and he wouldn't let them drive his trucks. He had old Studebaker trucks. He bought Studebakers. I went to Cotton's Wake, and of course, that had been 40 years since I'd helped him farm. At least 40 years since we all worked together. Hay and everything, we did it together. And I mentioned the Studebaker trucks, you know. And of course, I drove them. I was 7, 8 years old, but I drove them on the road with hay on them. Of course, that was not uncommon.
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't uncommon in those days. And Gary got to drive, my younger brother got to drive my dad's trucks, which were General Motors trucks, and they steered easier and everything. Because he's younger than me by 18 months. Wow. And I mentioned driving the trucks, and he said, I still got both them trucks. He still had them, you know. There were 40, 47s, 46, 47 models, Studebakers. He never sold anything. They never got rid of nothing on that farm.
Do they still run?
Yeah, they used them. He had, one of his brothers could fix stuff. Johnny was the mechanic. And Johnny fixed stuff all the time. But he didn't farm. Johnny didn't farm. He was a carpenter. He built houses and sold houses. But Johnny would do Kip Millard's stuff running. And Millard owned the International Harvester dealership in town too. So he had mechanics working for him. But
me and Dad went down a few years ago looking to see if his dad bought an old 1930, 38, 39 Chevy pickup at the auction. And it was still behind his Uncle Homer's, you know, house, and I wanted it, you know, but it was bad. I mean, it was just
a rag.
It was a rag. I mean, you'd have to replace every single thing on the truck. It wasn't savable. Somebody jumped on the cab at the top of it. It was caved in.
My Uncle Homer bought that. I remember that vividly. That was my dad's sister's husband, and they were buddies. He was my mother's first cousin, and he married my dad's sister. Of course, that was not uncommon. Mm-hmm. And he was my favorite man in the world. He was a cobbler, but we went to a sale. Me and my dad went to a sale about 1957, and farming was low. But he went to buy the land for the timber. But he bought everything there. Nobody there wanted anything. He had a Jubilee Ford tractor with all the machinery. That truck, he saved $75 for that truck. $75, that's what he paid for it. And it drove. It had a 4-speed transmission. You know, it was a 1-ton truck. And he bought it all. And we're dragging this stuff home, and Uncle Homer seen the truck. And he said, that's a pretty good looking old truck. My dad said, you can have it for $75. That's what I got in it. And he said, I'll take it. And he kept it for the rest of his life. It's still sitting there.
It's still sitting there.
It's still sitting there. It ain't gone.
Huh.
But that was one of the farm trucks, you know. 6-cylinder